March of Robots 2017 coming at you. I got a robot on my shirt. I got a robot in my brain. I got a robot in my name because my name is Gazbot. That's right. And we're doing March of Robots 2018. This is the second video. I wasn't planning on chronicling all the days. I mean, I was in terms of doing a robot each day and posting it on Instagram and Facebook and such as, sure. But I wasn't planning on doing a bunch of YouTube videos. I did one for the first day, like, hey, this is what I'm gonna be doing, and then I did the first two because I happened to record a good chunk of one I was working on. Well, as it turns out, I recorded a bit of some of the others I worked on. So this is day 3 to 7, I believe. If not, then whatever the title was. And I will talk a little bit about what's going on as you watch.
Boop. And here we go. Okay, so this was day 3. This was by request. This is Chappie. Happy Chappie. This is actually a character from a movie, Neil Blomkamp. I'm probably getting his name wrong. You can see there I brought in the reference on the left, and I actually just saw this movie not too long ago, even though it came out, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago. This is the same guy who did District 9, which I liked quite a bit. I liked both movies. I like District 9 better. Chappie very much reminds me of Short Circuit, the 80s movie. It's very much an updated version of that with a more of an urban flair to it. And I was unsure how I was going to do him because I couldn't find a lot of good stills from the movie. And then I found some good pictures of action figure reference, which I've talked about before. A lot of times characters, especially from live action shows, the easiest way to get reference is to either buy an action figure or find action figure photos online, especially for mechanoids where you can see like different angles. Like I wanted to see what is on the side of that leg on that one little hip joint. So you need a couple different photos. And he is a specific they were all kind of police droids, and he was a specific one that was damaged, so I needed reference of the police droid. For some of them I found better angles on the generic police droid, but then for him I wanted to make sure that I got the damage on his chest and the rejected sticker, and he has like a different arm that was put on, but he also changes throughout the movie and has like chains in certain scenes and stuff like that. So I kind of went for a midpoint between the generic police bot he starts off as and like the complete like gangster looking guy he is at other points in the movie. So I kind of split the difference, and I went for a medium bust shot, which is what the request was. Well, actually, this request was from Quellen, my wife. So she obviously didn't have to pay like a normal person would, although she did then send me money via PayPal because she's a weirdo and I love her. Um, but she just said, I said, who do you want? She said Chappie. And so I could have done anything, but I had not done a bust shot. I had done a headshot and I had done a full body shot. So I said, well, let me do a digital bust shot. And I wasn't sure if I was going to do color, black and white. And as you'll see, I ended up doing grayscale, black and white. Wow, this is like 8 times the speed or something like that. And you can see how long it's taking me. I'm like, I'll move this a little bit, maybe. Like the amount of time on screen has been like a minute or two of me doing nothing, which is probably like 15 minutes of me in real life doing nothing. Um, but anyway, yeah, I this was kind of difficult. I am talking to you now from the point of view of having done all the days you're about to see plus a few more. And this challenge, in some ways, it's a lot more difficult than I thought it was going to be. Not that doing a drawing every day, but I've been also trying to, take requests. Excuse me, take requests and also just trying to stretch myself so I'm not just doing a digital headshot every day, because that's kind of what I was doing with my warm-up sketches recently, is just doing, a digital headshot of a Power Ranger or whatever I want, and depending on what I choose and how detailed I make it, I could get those done in, a half hour, an hour, and I kind of thought that's what I was going to do with the March of Robots, and in some ways I wish I was, and in some ways I kind of regret doing it. I don't regret doing it because I'm getting some nice pieces, and it's fun to be doing a challenge, but it is taking up a lot more hours of my day, and it is slowing me down on issue 3 of the Horror A4 since I started this challenge, which is the struggle, that we all deal with of like, what projects to choose, and if you have a day job and you have even less time, a non-art day job, I mean, you have even less time in the day to get things done, so it's an even harder choice to make. Here I have a lot of free time that I was able to put into this that I could have been putting into my comic or other things, and maybe I should have, but I'm in the middle of it now. I'm about a third of the way through, so I'm going to keep going. But yeah, the certain challenges like this, like I never would have drawn Chappie, because I typically when I draw things, there's 3 reasons. A client pays me to draw it. I am going to make a print of it to sell at shows, or just for fun, and that's not including comic book stuff. And while I enjoyed the movie Chappie, I never had an urge to draw that character. It's extremely unlikely some client is going to ask me to draw Chappie. I mean, I guess I could get a commission, which essentially is what this is. And he's not a character I'd make a print of. I don't know that he's popular enough to make a print of. Maybe right when the movie came out, but also I try to keep things kind of thematic with my prints: Godzilla, Ultraman, Power Rangers, a little bit of Ninja Turtles. Ninja Turtles is the most off brand, I guess, because I mostly do monsters and robots, which then syncs up with my own personal comic, so it's sort of a synergy. But I digress. Wow, I didn't check how long this took me, but this was hours and hours and hours, obviously, because I've been talking for a while and it's going quick. But the point I'm making is that while part of me is like, "Ah, I wish I wasn't doing this challenge because it's taking up so much of my time," it is helping me to stretch a little bit as an artist. And I understand you may be thinking like, how is a robot making you stretch? But it's not just a robot I'm making up, nor is it like a animated, super robot from the 80s, which I like to do. It's kind of a quote unquote realistic robot, and it's got all these intricate parts, and I didn't want to fake it. I didn't just kind of do, it's cartoony because I have a comic book animation, whatever you want to call style, but I tried to do it, as realistic as possible and copy the parts precisely so that if it was like a design schematic for a toy or whatever, like these would be as correct as I can make them. And that was the challenge, to not just fake it and to not just like throw a lot of black in to cover stuff up. And I still skipped a lot of details, just by the nature of it. I would have had to spend days and days and days on it. And I think I'm actually gonna just fast forward to the end of this because this is taking way too long and I got nothing else to say on Chappie. All right, so that was at 8 times speed. This is now at 64 times speed, which should blow us straight through to the end. But you could see that I basically had to use different reference here. Again, I needed to see like the little head eyeball kind of light, so I zoomed in on that. And I think originally I thought I might do color, but once I got about this far, I decided I want to do a grayscale. Because again, I hadn't done a grayscale for the first two, and variety and blibbity blibbity blib. The other thing I did is in this phase, you could see, God, 64 speed, and it's still so slow. I went in with the super fine line to put in the details and screws and piping and all that kind of stuff, and that's what really, in my mind, makes it look a little less cartoony, a little more detailed, and that's sort of, the style I like to go for. The next day, I did a headshot traditional black and white ink. This is Redbot. He is from Power Rangers Ninja Steel, the current season. I'm actually not a big fan of that season or this character, but I want to do some Power Ranger stuff, and I wanted to put some heavy blacks as I did in a traditional drawing. The next day, I did another headshot digital. This is also from Power Rangers. This is from Megaforce, which was a couple years ago, 5 years ago, I think. And not one of my favorite seasons, but I love this character. He was kind of a fun, goofy, over-the-top environmentalist robot, and I love the way he looks. He's a knight, but he's a lion, and he's a robot, and he's very, I am good. I fight for the earth. I am Robo Knight, defender of the environment. And I wanted to practice coloring him, and this is probably my favorite one I've done so far, mainly because of the coloring, because I really wanted to practice getting a shine on the gold. It's sort of a chromy gold, and while I've done shine plenty of times, I wanted it to have a sort of mystic, King Arthurian sort of fantasy shine to it, even though he's a robot. And I think I succeeded in doing what I wanted. So that's the main reason I'm happy with him, I think. So following up Robo Knight, a paragon of justice, with Balance, who is sort of Super Sentai. This is a digital drawing, by the way. I did this on the Cintiq first, and then I turn it into a traditional drawing, which is something I've done more and more recently. I don't always draw directly into, like if I'm going to ink it, especially, because I know I'm going to have to erase pencil and stuff. But he is from Super Sentai Uchi Sentai Q Ranger, which is Space Sentai Q Ranger. Q being 9, so there's 9 of them, although of course then there ends up being more because stories. This has not yet been turned into to Power Rangers, I almost said Transformers, and it may or may not be. Not every single season of Super Sentai becomes Power Rangers, but in my mind they're basically the same thing. The stories are different, but as far as character designs and things like that, if somebody likes one, they're probably going to like the other. And this character is his season just ended. There's a new team, so he's from the last season, and he is a robot. Actually, from the fandom wiki, he was created by. Oh, I forget the ten. He's from the Tenbin system. He's Tenbin Gold, Trickstar Tenbin Gold, and he is the Gold Ranger. And they're all based on zodiac signs. And he is Libra, which is actually my sign. So he should be my favorite. I like him, but he's not my favorite. And this is, if you notice shaking a lot, I apologize for that. It might be difficult to watch, so hopefully you're not staring at it too much. I have a clamp arm over my desk that people have recommended to record live, analog drawing. and it works okay until I start drawing because then my desk shakes a little bit. Not enough that I notice it, but enough that the camera shakes. And so sped up, I don't know if it's better or worse, but um, anyway, enough about the character. He is a golden character, and funny enough, I originally was going to do him black and white. Kind of like with Redbot, but I was going to use Copics, gray and well, both gray, but warm and cool. Again, just trying to get variety in the types of drawings I'm doing for the month. And the other thing I did was normally if I'm doing something mechanical like this, I would use microns or similar pens to get a deadline, like a 9 or a 13 or something on the outside, or an 8, I guess I should say. I'm thinking of in Photoshop terms. And then I would do like a 5 and whatever. But because he's a character and because I'm trying to do different things, I used my normal Japanese brush pen to do most of the outside lines and most of his outlining. Then I went in for the details and used thinner lines. And here you can see I'm using a very thin pen. It's probably like a 1 to just do little shines. These aren't actual, they're not actual segments of the armor. They're not even the detail lines on the seams. They're just sort of like indications of form and light hitting him a little bit. But I didn't want to go too crazy because I knew I was going to use the Copics. But yeah, it's not that noticeable from this distance, but up close, there's definitely more of an organic, thick, thin feel to the outside of the lines, which I talked about a little bit about when I did King Joe, being that he's a robot, but he's sort of a character, so I didn't want to use too many circle templates and things like that to make him too stiff. Similar with Balance here. I wanted him, because he's also sort of a goofy character, not that you could tell it from this image, but he's sort of a goofy, over-the-top thief, and he's like pointing his finger, and he's like, yo-ho, that kind of character. So I just didn't want him to be too stiff, and this is probably the kind of stuff that, is not that noticeable. There I go, shaking the camera like a crazy person. So here was when I thought I was going to do Copics. I was using warm to kind of hit those shadows you could see in the light box, and I was using a very light, it was like a 1 or a 2 to kind of start the base. You build up, at least I do. You don't want to start with really dark stuff because you can't go back. But I got about that far, and I was like, you know what? I think he's going to look better in color because he's supposed to be gold. And he's got a little strip of blue right there, so I was like, well, I'll do the blue. And once I did the blue, I was committed. Because for a second, I thought I might do just the blue and still do black and white, which makes no sense. If he was like a blue ranger and that was his blue highlight, it makes sense. But he's the gold ranger, so if anything, yeah, I don't know what I was thinking, but so clearly I started going with gold. And unlike with Robo Knight, I didn't want him to be blazing shiny chrome gold because he is gold, but he's not that kind of chrome gold. He's more of a normal, like a I was gonna say a gold bar, but depending on where you see it, that might be gleaming as well. He is the color gold. He is metal, but more like a dull C3. Yeah, see, C3PO is shiny too sometimes. I can't think of a good example. I think you know what I mean. More of like a brassy kind of color as opposed to a chrome shine. So that's kind of what I was going for. And honestly, I think I'm looking right now as I'm talking. I have a Wikipedia page open, and he does look more yellowish brown as opposed to the orangish yellow I gave him here. I don't think it's wrong. I think it's fine. But if I was doing it again, I might try to use different colors. The weird thing is, I feel like maybe I should have used more browns and tans to get the color gold he is, but but it's one of those things where that might make him be technically more correct, but I could see people looking at him being like, why does he look brown and he's a gold character? So again, this is a little bit of experiment. Here I'm putting some white highlights, by the way. I have a white pen, and I was having a hard time getting it to track on top of the Copic, so I have a white pencil, and I went and grabbed my white pencil. And I just put little highlights just to accent certain areas. And I needed a background, so I decided to go with just a little bit of purple because that is the complementary color to yellow, which is mostly what I was using there. So I just used two or three different shades of purple just to give it a little bit of depth so it's not completely flat. And there's the end, and there is Trickstar 10-bin gold. Balance. The Gold Ranger. This next one is a character called Sizior, and I created him when I was in middle school. I'm going to say I was somewhere between the age of 10 and 13. I had a bunch of android characters that were all sort of like white-skinned, like literally white, not Caucasian. I think I had them have a little tint of yellow. I don't know if that's true or not, but in this version I did give him a little tint of yellow just so there was some hue to work with. And basically he was an android that didn't talk, that grew from normal size up to be gigantic size and had glowing eyes. I don't remember much more about him. He was one of the less interesting characters on the team of not interesting characters in books that I never finished writing. But I wanted an easy day is basically what this was. And so this was a fun one to crank out, and I just sort of made it like it was a pinup as though this was a character I just created or was bringing back or whatever, which I'm not, but it was a fun thing to do. And maybe I'll do another one in this series of one of my old robot characters from that team. But they are so similar looking, I don't know. We'll see. see. Up next, though, is a character from Marvel Comics. It is Warlock from the New Mutants, and this was a request slash commission from Marsh of Donkey Jaw Productions, Plex Couture, in hip hop circles. The man with a million names, but Donkey Jaw Productions is where you could find him. But Marshall Lee, actually, I think is what he goes by, and he was nice enough to do a digital head sketch commission, and he asked for Warlock from the New Mutants. And I love Warlock. He was one of my favorite characters when I was a kid. I loved the New Mutants. I loved him and Doug Ramsey mixing together. And he died, and then they brought him back. And I don't know if he's alive right now currently or not. I think he is, but I know they brought him back a few times, and kind of he was weird and different. But I always liked kind of the goofy old Warlock that was like, the shape changing techno organic guy. And there's a couple of different ways to draw him. I was trying to look up reference because I was sort of just drawing him out of my head. And this is, by the way, this is on my iPad Pro in Procreate with an Apple Pencil. Most of the time, I'm drawing on a Cintiq with Photoshop, which is anything you saw digital. That's what I was doing. But this one, I was, trying to take it a different direction. And and do it, on the go. I did it a little bit before a class I was teaching, and then I did a little bit while I was watching TV, and trying to actually use the hardware for what it's intended for. Most of the time I use it when I go on trips on airplanes and stuff like that, but there's no reason I can't use it while I'm watching a movie or, killing time somewhere else. The only downside is that I was so paranoid about having it in my backpack that like I had to bring it with me when I went in to get a coffee, and I had to, lock it in the back room when I went to the bathroom, and because like it's an expensive piece of hardware, and if somebody grabbed my backpack, I'd be out quite a bit of money. But anyway, I digress. I wanted him to be goofy but also showcase that he's shape changing and stuff. And the two main ways I've seen him drawn, well, and again, there's many, and I'm not talking about the shape of his head or his eyes or anything like that, but he has all this circuitry on him. And so sometimes it kind of looks like a lot of black armor plates all mixed around, and other times it looks more like he's this liquidy, soupy, yellow circuitry stuff, and that is the version I was going for here. And in some ways, I kind of like the earlier sketches more than the end sketch because I feel like not everyone is going to know what I was going for because I don't think people draw him that way as much anymore. Oh, and also, at least originally, and I imagine still, the way he sustains himself, he's a member of this group, techno, I don't know what they're called. He's a techno organic creature. I don't know if that's what the name of his race is. Maybe that's the name of his race. I don't know, whatever. But they absorb life force and it gives them energy. So like a bad one might suck the life out of a human or something, but he would eat flowers and apples and anything organic. And I remember a specific one early on where there was like a little fluffy dandelion, and he talks funny. He's like, "Query, can self, sustain on this object or whatever?" And they're like, "Yeah, you could have it. It's a dandelion. That's fine." And so that's a scene that always stuck out in my head. So that's why I wanted to show him doing that because, again, it shows that he's kind of crazy and wacky, and he's looking at this flower, and it's kind of cute, but in a second he's gonna, quote unquote, eat it. And yeah, so here you can see I put in the yellow, and I put a little bit more shading to pop out the yellow. At first it was a flat yellow, which is how he was typically colored in the version I was talking about, but I felt like I had to put in a little bit of highlight and shadow, and I put a little bit of white on top, and that's what I thought really brought it together. But anyway, thanks again to Marsh for requesting that, and I think that's the end here. I'm just going to cut to a quick shot of it, and then you'll see my stupid face talking to you in real life again.
And that's it. Now today, I've actually completed one that wasn't in this set, that I suppose will be in the next video. So until then, hoots!